All right, I'm going to start my introduction again. Sorry. Um, Welcome to the February 2025 meeting of FileMaker developers in Southern California, also known as FMDiSC. I'm Bob Shockey, and I'm this month's host. We have some great material for you today. Later, we'll be having a special presentation by a certain law enforcement agency, which will not be recorded. Before that, we're going to have our own Chris Moyer of the Moyer Group with his excellent tech news roundup. And in just a moment, actually, just now, we're going to kick things off with Bridget Lumb from Claris with the latest on Claris Studio. So, Bridget, why don't you go ahead?
All right, sounds good. Thank you all for letting me join. Share my screen, hopefully successfully this time.
There you go. It's working.
Yep. Um, okay, so like I mentioned before, I wanted to keep this presentation pretty informal and just ask questions as we go and talk a little bit about Claris Studio. And I also wanted to do a little bit of live development, showing you some of the ways we can leverage Claris Studio. So I wanted to start by anchoring around our famous T-shaped diagram. I know we used it last year at Engage, and it's kind of the way we're presenting the Claris platform and our platform vision. And so on the left, we have our internal facing solutions, and that's where FileMaker lies. FileMaker is really good at, for internal teams being able to deploy a solution to anyone, anywhere, and being able to manage that solution. That being said, as you all know, there are a few limitations when it comes to WebDirect and just with modern technologies for external facing solutions. And for businesses, that can be a large part of a business, of having contractors or vendors, customers, things like that, externally facing, that need to access certain data within your solution. And that's where Claris Studio enters the fold. And in the center, we have our data, as well as Claris Connect, which can connect both FileMaker to Studio, as well as third-party applications or anything like that. And so I just kind of wanted to anchor around this kind of description of where Studio is at today and where we, hope to bring it. And this is our vision. So I'm not sure how aware within this group people are of Studio, if people have been developing with it, have been able to get access to it. I'm sure there's a broad range. And would I be correct in assuming that is the case?
I think so. I think broad range best describes it. Everything from people who have been using it actively to people who haven't touched it yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for those that haven't been able to touch it yet, I'm not sure if you've seen my community live, but we are rolling out complimentary access to Claris Studio currently. And so I'll send a link to the form after this presentation for anyone that wants to request access, or as a partner requesting access for a client as well. And that will get you access to both Claris Studio and Claris Connect tied to your active FileMaker license. So I wanted to walk through a solution really quickly. I wanted to show you guys, I actually have to pull it up, a solution I had made about a month ago. And then I wanted to walk through with you all behind the scenes how we build it, and kind of just interactively build it and ask questions, if that sounds good for you guys. Sorry, I accidentally X'd this out right before.
Now this is,
of course, there's an ad.
this is my hair going on day 3. I've tried every oily.
Everyone, today I'm going to be walking through an end-to-end use case of a simple but effective way to leverage Claris Studio to expand your existing FileMaker solution. In this example use case, here at Peakworks, a home maintenance service company, we rely on FileMaker to manage and streamline our internal operations. This demo showcases our ability to quickly and efficiently begin extending our tailored solution to our clients while seamlessly leveraging the resulting data within our own system. On the screen, you can see a job request form that was created in Claris Studio that's hosted on the web. First, playing the role of a customer at Peakworks, I've been experiencing issues with the lock on my front door recently, and I would like to get someone out here to take a look at it and repair it. I have access to this form linked directly off of Peakworks' website. In this form, you can see there is a space for me to add my name and my contact information. Next, I can fill out a description of the job request I'm looking to have done, as well as a photo if I need to. Then I can put the date that I would like this job request to be completed by. And lastly, I can add the address that the service location would be happening at. Now I can go ahead and submit this form. Now, switching to the role of an employee at the company, I'm going to walk through how we can leverage this data in our FileMaker solution. Part of my role here at Peakworks is to manage all of the incoming job requests and convert them to work orders for our technicians. In the triage center, you can see all of the requests coming in from the form. And here you can see Jane Doe's submission for her broken lock. Once I go ahead and assign this job to one of our technicians and establish a priority, I can go ahead and create a work order. Now that this job request has been converted to a work order, it no longer lives in the triage center. Instead, I can visit the work order dashboard to see all of the in-progress work orders and their status. Let's take a closer look at our broken lock work order. Here you can see the information that Jane Doe submitted about her front door lock. You can also see that this has been assigned to our technician, Amy, and there's a space for Amy to add notes and update the status of her ticket, as well as track her billing. Okay, so that was a quick demonstration of how a data collection or a form could be used, leveraged with Claris Studio, and integrating back into FileMaker. I'll pause real quick for questions there, and then I will dig into kind of creating the form and connecting it to FileMaker. No questions?
I don't see any in the chat either, so I think should continue from here probably.
Okay. Oh, Tony's raised his.
I'll ask a question. I'll play the role of the person who doesn't know anything. So that was a demonstration of the user interface with a job and a actions against job, kind of a one-to-many there, one job, many actions. Is there, when you're building a studio app, is there visibility onto an underlying data model?
So being able, you're saying like being able to see the schema beneath.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, that is correct. And that's I think kind of leads me into the next point. Let me walk through just kind of an overview of Studio and what you can see and what we can do, and then we'll get into the specific use case. Does that sound good?
Sounds good to me.
So here you can see I have logged into Claris Studio with my Claris ID. And this is the the main page, kind of the center. And here you can see we have a collection of hubs that contain views. And so a hub is kind of thought of similar to, a folder, or it's just a collection of views. And the views are kind of the UI in Studio, and what can be presented to the user or where we can interact with the data. So here, here you can see the different types of view types that are available. And that being said, we're obviously working on building out other view types as well. But so in the video I just showed, obviously was the form view, where you can, where anonymous data collection can be leveraged. And from there, Tony, I think to point to your question, we have a spreadsheet view, which is very helpful for being able to manage data, or manipulate and filter that data from more of a developer or organizational standpoint. And then along with the form and the spreadsheet view, we also have list detail, Kanban, group lists, gallery, timeline, and a calendar view. And here at the bottom, you can see we have a starter pack of views. This view has, or this starter pack has 5 different views in it that walk through a project management use case and how that could be leveraged. So a good way to see kind of just how the data interacts with each other, and kind of plug in your solution. And really quick before I jump into the specifics, I just wanted to touch on the user management. And there currently today, there is only a manager and a member role within Studio. And the manager has the ability to develop in Studio, create new views, edit what data is being shown, the UI, things like that. And a member has access to hubs that are shared with them by a manager, and can access, edit, update data within those views that they're given access to. And then I also wanted to mention there is kind of the third role of just an anonymous user who would be accessing a form from a website, but that doesn't require any external validation.
Bridget, I have a question. When it comes to that, to security in general, and when I'm talking about security, I'm talking about, really controlling user permissions on a as far as granularity goes. If you were going to compare the granularity of Claris Studio to just in general to the granularity of a desktop FileMaker solution, how would you say they compare? Like, would you say that you can do about half of what you can do with what's in desktop FileMaker, or is it further along than that or less than that?
I think right now the granularity in terms of Claris Studio is pretty limited. As I just mentioned, there's kind of the 2 roles in terms of manager and member. So anything like beyond that, it's not getting into, extremely refined details at this moment. So, and I know as FileMaker users, you guys are used to having kind of that granularity and control, which is something that we're working on building out. That being said, currently it's limited in that, if a member is invited to a hub, they have access to that data. That being said, something that is coming soon is kind of more of that refined access control and being able to only show specific subsets of data to particular users, things like that. But as we focused more on things like data collection, dashboarding, things like that to start off with, we thought this was kind of a good starting point, as we build out those permissions.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think, a really obvious example might be if you're creating a customer portal and you want, the administrative end of the customer, like the owner of the company, let's say, to be able to see things, that maybe financial data that he wouldn't want everyone else on his team to see.
Absolutely.
Those are things that you'd really want to have strong control over.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Picking tangents. Mr. Paul's gonna help.
Okay. Listen to me.
Yes,
You have to make sure when you're all done, you wash your hands.
yes.
Please
And
mute
Mr. Paul can
yourself.
help you.
If everybody, please make sure you're muted.
Okay, so let's jump into just quickly looking at how this form was created. The interface, especially for the forms, is pretty intuitive and straightforward in terms of creating a form. But I wanted to point out the different field objects and static objects we have. There's a lot more in terms of, different field options compared to FileMaker. That being said, they do all kind of distill down to, what's in FileMaker. It's just more so that it's, readily available from a UI perspective to, drag and drop these things. So here you can see in the form, if I were to go and drop a short text field, you can see how the fields are responsive and move around depending on where I'd like to drop it. And so here you can see I've already went ahead and put in the fields that I want for the name, phone, email, and all the other things that I would want to collect for a job request that then I would have to go and complete. And here at the top, you can see a header where we can edit the background of this and put company logos as well. And there's a lot of different things we can do with these forms in terms of conditional visibility, in terms of how the customer fills out the form. We can show different fields, as well as kind of branching paths for different form pages based off of what they select. But for this form, it's pretty flat in terms of what we need to collect. And so I haven't added any automation to this. I will pause really quickly here just for questions about forms in general before we dig into connecting it to our FileMaker solution.
I just have a comment. I think the first time I ever saw this, way back when Studio was introduced, the way that things work around one another as you drag and drop was one of the eye-popping things about it. I think it's really, really well designed.
Well, thank you, Bob. I know that is something we have been working hard to refine, as well as, objects jump around and move on a page, making sure it's not a jarring experience, and something that we're still refining. And so here you can see this is the first page of the form, and once it's submitted, there is a confirmation page as well. And if I were to zoom out back to the workflow, here you could see that I could add other pages to the form. Obviously, this is just a simple job request form. That being said, in terms of data collection, there could be, registration, event registrations, medical intake forms, things like that, that require multiple pages and branching paths. And Studio does give you that flexibility. And so I wanted to take, I think, just a few minutes here to look at how this is then connected to your FileMaker solution, because that's really the important point. You guys are all FileMaker developers, and you need this data within your FileMaker solution to be able to leverage it. Or you might have data in your FileMaker solution that you would like to leverage within Studio. So how do we get that data in between one another? So currently, I think it was published end of December, an engineering blog on a few different ways to be able to connect your Studio data source to your FileMaker application. And I just wanted to touch on both of those ways and talk about those, because I think that will kind of open the door to several questions and things like that. So the first way we have here, you can see I'm in my FileMaker Pro layout currently, and I want the status toolbar.
View, yeah, view. So,
It's in view.
Hmm?
It's in
Oh,
view.
Command-Shift-S.
There you go. Status toolbar down below. There you go.
thank you. I thought someone was saying ew, not view. But thank you for your help. So the first way that we can connect our Studio data source to our FileMaker solution is with a direct connection using a shadow table. So within the relationships field, you can, when you go to add a table, here, specifying the table data source, here you could see Studio Engineering Blog. That is actually the name of the Studio organization that I was just showing you. The one thing I want to note here is that whether you're on server or cloud, making sure that you are signed, here you can see it's grayed out because I am signed in, but signed in with your Claris ID to be able to connect. Otherwise, the table won't show up as available. And so here you could see within the data source, I have two different tables, and the job request form is the one that I had leveraged in this solution. And so here you can see I've already pulled it in, but having this job request form here, this data is now available in your FileMaker solution to leverage as you see fit. Pausing here for questions before I jump into an alternative approach.
Yeah, I have one. You said you have to be logged in with your Claris ID to make this connection, but once you've made it, do you need to be logged in to use the data or do further development?
I believe once you're logged in, it should remain connected. So I think, I believe that once you're logged in, you should be able to work with this data.
Okay, and Vince has a question.
Okay. Vince?
Vince, you're up. You gotta unmute yourself.
And I had a follow on too.
Yeah, so I had a question. How do you set that up? How do you set up that connection on server? And just like in FileMaker, you may have multiple data sources that you can establish on the graph and as to different FileMaker files. What if you had a need to connect to different Claris IDs and blend them in as different data sources as part of the solution? I don't think that's possible. Is that correct? So two-part.
Yes. refresh me on the first part again.
How do you set that up? How do you set that up on the
Yeah.
server?
Oh, for server. Yeah, so for server, this is actually a server hosted file. You just need to, here you could see there's sign out with Claris ID. That would be sign in. So you just need to sign in to connect, to be able to connect that. Does that make sense?
So that kind of gets embedded into the file, and when the file is hosted, for example, if you run a script on the server, it just works. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And the second question was, can you have more than one connection? I assume not.
Yeah. So currently you can't have more than one connection. So like I think what you're saying of if you have several, your use case you're saying is several different studio tables and you want them pulled in to the FileMaker file, correct?
Yeah, like different studio tables, but it sounds like you could have different studio tables from Studio from the same Claris ID. But what I'm asking is if you had multiple Claris IDs for whatever reason, because you're working with another organization, you're trying to blend their data in with your data. So just like we have multiple data sources in FileMaker, I guess you can only use one Claris ID at a time.
Yeah,
Okay.
so currently I think it would be one Claris ID at a time. That being said, the approach that I will show you in the with the Studio connector, I think you could leverage multiple different Studio organizations in one file. But I think touching on your point, Vince, slightly different, but you can have multiple Studio tables within your FileMaker solution. But as you're saying, with different Studio organizations right now with the direct connection, that wouldn't work. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And Steve had a question as well. Go ahead, Steve.
Thanks, Bob. I actually had a quick confirmation on what Lynn was saying. Is it that once you're logged in, you've established the connection and added the table, you don't have to necessarily be logged in order to use it? In other words, you set it up, but then your users across your organization don't necessarily have to be logged in to get that same access to those things and use them. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, cool. And real quick, going back to the drag and drop that you were showing us in Studio on the web, things were, jumping around nicely and making space for each other. What if you actually wanted, like, you've got some half width fields there, name and phone. What if you actually wanted several to be stacked up on left or on right with negative space left over? Will it allow negative space, or does it really dogmatically fill it?
So currently with the form view, it's pretty kind of dogmatic in terms of the structure. That being said, custom view that we're working on does give developers that kind of flexibility to, both have kind of dynamic and reactive UI, but also giving them more of the granularity of, like you're saying, being able to pixel polish.
So that's always been kind of a hallmark of Studio, is that it I think the phrase that's always used is it doesn't give you pixel perfect design ability like FileMaker does. And and that's been okay. That's just been the paradigm. But it sounds like you guys are kind of moving at least partly in that direction. But it's probably not in terms of measuring by pixels. Is it something like number of characters wide? Is that the direction you're going with that? Or I'm just curious about it, or just in like a percentage of page.
I think it will be, there's a grid system
Mhm.
in custom view, similar to that of the form view, but you know, a little bit more refined. And so I think within the grid system, there will be ways to be able to you know, polish and refine things more to, you know, like you're saying, the pixel polish. But that being said, like what we're trying to work really hard with on Studio is, like I think you said, taking away at least some of the lift of that comes with FileMaker in terms of designing a layout that looks nice, and trying to, you know, hopefully make it just a little bit more simple while we're still kind of building out the pixel polish.
Great, thank you.
Just to clarify, I don't think of what I was thinking of as pixel polish. I'm looking at this and really, even though I like to put things exactly where they want them, I'm like trying to embrace the, okay, let's just let the tool do the work. And also sometimes you want to put these 4 fields over here, and they're really not huge fields, but you want them all grouped together so that somebody fills those out and then gets to the next section. And you just want to say, don't fill these up, just leave these in a column. You know, not getting perfectionist about it, but also having a little bit of control.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I think we're trying exactly what you're saying. We're trying to strike a balance between, you know, giving you guys the control that you want while still making it easy. And there's obviously a place between pixel polish and everything out of the box. But that's a great point, and yes, something we're working on.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. So really quickly, I know I only have a few more minutes. I wanted to discuss really quickly and jump to touching on the Claris Studio connector in Claris Connect. And so this is an alternative way that you could move data from Studio to FileMaker, or keep things in sync. As well as there's a lot of other use cases that come in handy with the Studio connector. But I wanted to walk through and highlight with the Studio connector. Here I can touch on, we have a lot of different actions in terms of when a field is updated. If multiple records are created, you can trigger things when a new record is created, deleted, or updated. So you can see how, you know, if the direct sync with FileMaker, you need more kind of granularity into what's happening when, or keeping things in sync. This is when the Studio connector really comes into play and can support kind of moving data between FileMaker and Studio, as well as, you know, third parties. And so the other thing that I wanted to highlight with the Studio connector, and I know has been something that it has been a friction point for people, is the attachment support. So with the Studio connector now, you're able to move the attachments from Claris Studio and have them accessible in Claris FileMaker. So specifically with this form, we have the upload photo, and with the direct connection, attachment support isn't supported. And with the Studio connector now, you can move these files back and forth. So that was, you know, something I wanted to call out. I know has been a blocker for a lot of people. And the Studio connector, you know, gives a pretty simple way to move attachments. And another thing that could be done, you know, is leveraged of when a record is creating, sending out a confirmation email, or, you know, an email to the person that has to review the form, things like that, integrating with, any of the other connectors or custom connectors you've built to, really automate the workflow. So I will pause there because I feel like this will probably open up a lot of questions.
Doug, I'm sorry, Doug had a
real quick,
question.
real quick, Bridget, if you need a few more minutes, we've got a little leeway there.
Okay. And that's this was mostly what I wanted to cover today, and that's specifically answering your guys' questions. So I think let's just open it up to questions and we can wrap up from there.
Doug, go ahead.
Okay. I put a question in the chat. How does a business give a client access to be able to send confidential data?
So here you're specifically saying like a client having access to Claris Studio, or
yeah, so it basically it would be a form like you're talking about, but it would have in our case we have a preschool, so it'd be kid's name and birth date and stuff, and parents' address, and we would want the kid's doctor and all this stuff sent to us, but nobody else being able to get access to that. So do we just have an open form online that they log into, or do we send them access, or what do we do?
I think that would be more just like both options are, available and could be built. It would just depend on the requirements of your solution, of if a public form works, then that would be fine. But if you would rather have them logging in and being able to maybe update information, things like that, it very much depends on kind of the requirements of your situation. But that being said, the data, the public form, no one would be able to see the data that's sitting behind a form. Only those that have access to, manager access to Claris Studio would.
Okay, we would kind of like, they fill out the form, they hit send, and then it's gone. It comes to us, and it's maybe sent to us, creates a PDF, or the data just gets sent, and and is no longer
All right, Doug, hold on.
online.
In that case, I think what you're saying there, you could use the Studio connector to send the data either to your FileMaker solution, or like you said, maybe PDF or an email. And then like once it's sent, using an action to delete that data in Studio if you don't want it online.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep. Other questions?
I think following on just briefly to what Doug was asking, I think people who have lived in the FileMaker ecosystem forever, like most of us here, I think there's quite a difference in thinking with Claris Studio in terms of when it comes to logins, whether it's a Claris ID, which I think most of the time it's really just a matter of setting someone up with a Claris ID. Is that right? Or is it more of employing some kind of OAuth authentication?
Yeah, currently it's only Claris ID. That being said, external IDP is coming very soon. And so being like I think you said, setting people up with the Claris ID or some type of external IDP.
Okay.
Mhm.
Great. Are there any more questions for Bridget?
Peter?
Yeah, Peter. You're muted. I'm still not hearing you, Peter.
I don't hear him either.
Yeah, I don't hear him.
All right. Peter, why don't you work on that? And anyone else have any questions? It looks to me like the product is, it's coming along, Bridget. How would you say, in terms of resources? I mean, do you think Claris Studio is where Claris is putting most of their effort right now, or just like what percentage of the overall R&D budget, I guess, or R&D time, let's say, is going into Claris Studio?
I don't know if I have percentages. I wouldn't say like a majority is being spent on Studio versus FileMaker, or Connect, things like that. I think we still have a lot of resources obviously working on FileMaker and improving that. Specifically we've put a lot into AI in FileMaker, and hopefully that will be coming to Studio soon as well. But we're more just focused on like we anchored around the T-shaped diagram at the beginning, and using the right tool for the right job. So we have this need for the external facing solutions, and Studio is a good fit for that. So that is the resources there are being put towards Studio. But that being said, there are obviously other things within FileMaker or Connect that are being built out as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. All right.
I see Peter's question in the chat of I don't see a lot of new stuff compared to 2022, so it's only the file attachment. I think, Peter, I would ask you to go and take a look, and actually I'm going to send the request form as well for Claris Studio. So people can request access. That being said, I think Studio has come a long way since 2022. In terms of like grand new features, those might not be in the product yet today. But that being said, come to engage. We have a lot of exciting announcements around our entire platform there. And there's also a whole list of other things, as I think Rosemary just called out, in terms of, calculations, conditional branching, relationships for different tables, as well as iframe support. So being able to embed a form in your website, dashboarding, things like that. That, again, I didn't have time to touch on everything today, but there is a lot there, depending on your use case. And hopefully, we want to get you guys access now. So as we continue to build it out, you guys are along on this journey.
Great. Well, Bridget, really appreciate you coming to share this with us. Maybe at a later date we can have you show us some of those more advanced features so that we can kind of continue the conversation.
Yeah, of course, I would love to.
Okay, great. All right. Well, again, thank you, Bridget. Really appreciate having you here. Next up, Chris Moyer. You ready to go, Chris?
I am. Let me fire up here. There we go. Hit share.
Chris is going to give us his excellent monthly tech news roundup.
All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we
I
can.
can.
Excellent. This was one of the trickiest tech news roundups that I've had to do because, as some of you who are in the FMDiSC email digest saw, I started freaking out when all sorts of stuff started going down at the federal level, and really made me question what is relevant tech news to the FileMaker community. So I have heavily revised this deck from what it was like a week ago. And I kept a couple things in, just a couple, but and I'll start with those and I'll move on to more general tech news. But yes, it was a fair question that was asked, like, is this really relevant to FileMaker developers? So here we go. This one was alarming to me. We've talked about Salt Typhoon in the past. The people who were working on Salt Typhoon all got fired on January 20th. So this is the CISO, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, has a department underneath it, the Cyber Safety Review Board, who was working on Salt Typhoon, and all those people got let go on January 20th. They were told that they could reapply and have at it, but I haven't seen any other news about whether any of these groups have been reconstituted or what exactly happened with that. So sort of an open question. And then this one I just saw today, which kind of made me giggle, so I had to include it. And that is that the folks running the Doge website apparently did not host it on government servers. They put it up on Cloudflare pages and left their database open. And so hackers got in there and started writing their own content for the Doge website, which does not inspire confidence, but there you are. Shifting over to our world of the Apple ecosystem and FileMaker and programming in general and things like that, something that just sort of came down was Apple and Alibaba got together. I'm sure everybody noticed the DeepSeek new AI model come through and completely upend the valuations of a lot of AI players in that space. You know, in China, the cybersecurity regulator requires Apple to work with a local company to develop AI services in the Chinese market. And obviously, Apple has its Apple Intelligence features that they've been working on. So they had to co-develop those with Alibaba for approval. So sort of, you know, as a market necessity, Apple had to work with Alibaba. Investors really liked this for Alibaba, and their stock went up in Hong Kong. And Apple's stock hasn't been doing great. Their Apple Intelligence rollout has been beset with problems. They had 11% fourth quarter revenue drop in China. So lots of bumps in the road there. But it's interesting that here we have Alibaba, who is actually a competitor of DeepSeek, is working with Apple now, and apparently to their benefit. Let's see, Google. I have spoken in the past about how various AI companies, OpenAI, Anthropic, have started working with the likes of Palantir to start providing LLMs for the defense and intelligence communities. And Google was sort of the lone holdout on that. I think Meta has also gotten in that game as well. And there are obvious advantages to that. All of a sudden, you are able to access the kind of investment from defense contractors that you can't get if you have that prohibition. So Google has dropped the prohibition, removed a promise to not use AI for weapons or surveillance. A lot of their employees are not happy about that, using the movie trope, "Are we the baddies?" Posting on internal message boards. One meme showed the CEO Sundar, when you query Google's search engine for how to become a weapons contractor, it showed the Google CEO. So a lot of stuff like that. A lot of Google employees aren't happy, but Google is now open for business with the defense community. So that is a shift from what it had been for the last couple of years. DeepSeek. So again, I mentioned DeepSeek a moment ago. You know, it was conventional wisdom that in order to build next level frontier AI models that you had to spend billions of dollars and have huge data centers and tons of GPUs and stuff like that. And then DeepSeek came along and said, hey, we built this thing for $6 million. And so a lot of people who have looked at this have been taking issue with that assessment. First of all, they have 50,000 NVIDIA GPUs and they spent $1.6 billion on building out their infrastructure. And so now they sort of hedged a little bit and said, well, that was just a portion of the total training cost. But you know, the larger story is that BS, basically. It's still fairly expensive to create this stuff. And OpenAI, in a separate story, actually said some of their training data has showed up inside of DeepSeek. And so it looks like DeepSeek also appropriated, which is ironic because OpenAI has been accused of appropriating content for their models. And so it's just, you know, it's like a snake swallowing its own tail. But anyway, there's significant indications that DeepSeek absolutely was not able to create a groundbreaking model that equaled the performance of the frontier models for $6 million. It cost them a lot more than that, but it sure wobbled the stock market for several days. Speaking of DeepSeek, there is a security company called Now Secure. For those of you who downloaded the DeepSeek iOS mobile application, similar to the ChatGPT mobile application, they have found a bunch of security flaws in this. I have the link to their URL at the bottom of the screen here if anyone's interested in looking into it. Problems they found: unencrypted data transmission, sends data over the internet without any encryption, making it vulnerable to interception, man-in-the-middle attacks. They have weak and hard-coded encryption keys. They use an outdated DES encryption standard. Insecure data storage, extensive data collection and fingerprinting. They collect user data, device data, which can be used for tracking and de-anonymizing anything you send over the wire. And then the data itself is sent to China and governed by the People's Republic of China laws in terms of what your privacy rights are in compliance. There are implications for any business and government organizations using this: exposure of sensitive data, prompt data, intellectual property, strategic plans, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, if you have something data-wise you want to protect, don't use the app. But if you're just trying to find out how to make pancakes, knock yourself out. Also, some hackers created some Python packages that they described as DeepSeek Python packages. They posted them. You can see a screenshot of the actual page that they were posted on by a hacker named who goes by the name of BVK. There's the link at the bottom of the page there. It was downloaded 117 times in the US, 36 times in China, 12 in Russia, and then several other countries as well. So by the time security analysts discovered this, the damage was limited, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So it was contained before causing widespread harm. But, you know, once installed, these packages would execute commands to collect your system information, steal environment variables, which could include credentials for cloud storage or database access or any other sort of infrastructure access. And then it was sent to a command and control server hosted on Pipedream, which is a developer integration platform. Anyway, so that's not good. And then shifting over to FileMaker land, Christian Schmidt released the MBS plugin version FileMaker 15. So that's out. It has a bunch of new stuff in it. Interestingly, he has a lot of XML feature functionality in it, which is interesting and sort of newly relevant because a lot of stuff like the FileMaker clipboard is stored in XML. And as people are searching for ways of integrating using AI LLMs in FileMaker creation or script authoring or things like that, you would need to manipulate the XML in the FileMaker clipboard to be able to, take a plain English version of, say, a FileMaker script, turn it into a pasteable XML FileMaker script, and then paste it into FileMaker. So this is just in time for that sort of work for those of you who are dabbling around Code Assist and FileMaker. So interesting stuff. Objective-C is a longtime Mac malware analyst. They released the Mac malware of 2024. The way the page was rendered, I sort of stuck the URL right in the middle here. So where you see that giant HTTPS objective-c.org, that's where the blog post is that has all this stuff. But, if you're a Mac user, and I think a lot of us are, this is just good stuff to stay on top of. Have a look at it. Alibaba, who, as I mentioned earlier, is in partnership with Apple and is a competitor of DeepSeek. I think the week after DeepSeek released their model, they released their own AI model that says is even better than DeepSeek. So they released a new version of their Qwen 2.5 artificial intelligence model. Qwen, by the way, is fantastic at coding. So for those of you trying to do coding sorts of things, or maybe write JavaScript in a web viewer in FileMaker, something like that, great model to use. Anyway, good article on this. The link, as usual, is at the bottom. It's a Reuters article. And then this one, the U.S. Navy banned the use of DeepSeek due to security and ethical concerns, sent out a warning to all its members to avoid using it in any capacity. So you can't even download a model and run it locally or something like that. The text of their menu included, we would like to bring to your attention a critical update regarding a new AI model called DeepSeek. It is imperative that team members do not use its AI for any work-related task or personal use. So you can't even use it on your own devices if you're in the Navy. No go for any of that stuff. So it's an all-hands memo. The distribution list was OpNav, which is in the entire operational Navy. And this was based on an advisory from the Naval Air Warcraft Center Division Cyber Workforce Manager. And then, there's been so much going on. So you would be forgiven if you did not notice that there was undersea cable sabotage between, Sweden and Latvia, I guess it was. There was a fiber optic outage that began the Sunday before January 26th. NATO has been keeping watch on forces or ships in the area. They actually stopped a ship, they boarded a ship, and so now the Sweden Security Service has taken over, and they've sort of gone quiet, other than to say, we've got them and we're not telling you what we're up to. So they're performing some sort of investigation. I think they have the crew detained, and who knows what will happen next. This was an interesting one. This was actually posted on 9to5Mac, where you usually don't expect to see Subaru updates, but apparently there was a security vulnerability which allowed millions of cars to be tracked, remotely unlocked, and remotely started. A full year's worth of location history is available, accurate within 5 meters. So if anyone wanted to know where you went in your Subaru, they would be able to do that. Security researcher named Sam Curry reached an unusual deal with his mother. He would buy her a Subaru if she would let him try to hack it. So he did. So he started looking through the Subaru mobile app, didn't find any there. He went to publicly accessible employee-facing applications and was able to break into Subaru's telemetry application, found insecure password reset code, and even though it had 2FA authentication on it, it was client facing. So he was able to just skip over that code, running it in a debugger browser, and was in and had everything. So if you have a Subaru, I don't know what to tell you. You've been compromised, I guess. This was an interesting one. This was posted on Reddit. It seemed topical since we're having someone from the agency coming on soon. Someone said they just posted 2 whistleblower reports with the FBI, but the infrastructure seems down. They didn't get a case number, no confirming email or any sort of acknowledgement that they had done anything. And so a Redditor suggested that they go to the democrats.senate.gov whistleblowers site and submit it there. But it's interesting that the FBI whistleblower site seems down. This is sort of on top of all the inspectors general of various agencies being let go over the last couple of weeks. So the signal is being tamped down. And then I got a couple things from Jay Welshofer. For those of you who are longtime FileMaker people, you may remember him as the product manager for FileMaker 8. He sent me 2 things just in the last couple of days that I thought were interesting. One is a blog post by O'Reilly about the end of programming as we know it. And basically their thesis is, the first programmers were connecting physical circuits to perform each calculation. They were succeeded by programmers writing machine instructions as binary code. We had punch cards once upon a time, higher level compiled languages like Fortran, COBOL. And it's always been an evolving practice in terms of what it means to be a programmer. And so everybody freaking out about how programming is over are not really keeping this history in mind. And so they're saying this is just another evolution. It's a different way of programming that we're moving to, and it's still early days, and we don't know how this is going to shake out and settle. But everybody should stop setting their hair on fire and just think about what the new paradigm might look like and what the best practices might be. Now, despite that, there's another announcement out of Microsoft, actually. So this is Microsoft Research, and they surveyed a bunch of workers who use generative AI to complete tasks and found that, for those of us who remember paper maps and driving around in a car and having to plan your route and think about things and worry about if your exit's coming up, we don't think about any of that stuff anymore when we drive around with a map app on our cell phone. And so we completely dialed down the mental effort required to remember how we got to a place and how to get back to a place. And they're saying something similar is happening in the world of coding. Programmers are getting lazy. They're not engaging their minds as much. They're not using critical thinking to look at what they get back and say, does it work or not? If it doesn't work, most people just say, hey, it didn't work, have another go to the AI. And they're not really looking at it and thinking it through. And so they are seeing an alarming behavior from programmers who are using AI tools in terms of disengaging some of their critical thinking skills. So this is the research from Microsoft. There's a link on the bottom here about New Scientist, but you can just search for this exact title and you'll find the research. But this is a Microsoft authored study. And there you go. That's all I got for today. Back to
Wow.
you.
Well, I don't know why it was so light this time, Chris.
Oh, I was freaking out 2 weeks ago. I was going, oh my God, the sky is falling. And
There's nothing to report.
I know, I can't think of a thing to say. So yeah, so I was trying to keep it a little more focused on our world rather than on my general existential dread.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're not any different from just about every reporter who I hear from across all different media about, there's no shortage of things to talk about these days. It's it's constant and it's a flood. So Wim has a good point in case you guys didn't see this. The skill of a programmer is not the tech skills. Those are table stakes. The real value is in the critical thinking. Couldn't agree
And our
more.
critical thinking is going down, which is something to keep in mind. And, I think AI is a great thing, and I think it'll make us more productive, but we got to sort of be conscientious about keeping our head in the game and not being lazy. 'cause it's
Yeah, we
really
can't outsource
coding.
our
Right.
analytical skills.
Exactly right.
I mean, get
Yeah,
good answers from AI, getting quick answers from AI is great, but we got to make sure it's accurate. And that's critical thinking skills.
That's right.
it's a very good point. Very good point. My wife teaches high school. Trying to teach critical thinking to her students is getting harder every year. And she blames technology. So there you go. All right. Well, with that, we're going to take a break here. I'm going to stop recording, and there will be no more recording for the rest of today's presentations.